There's so many nice things you could say about this next guest, but I'm going to focus on one. When it comes to watching sports, he's kind of old-fashioned. He believes men should compete against men. Women should compete against women. A little bit of a throwback. We're talking about the superstar representative from the 17th Congressional District of Florida, Representative Greg Steube. Hey, man.
Hey, how are you?
I mean, very old-fashioned of you to make the boys swim in the boys' pool. What the hell's going on, Steube?
Yeah, I know. It's a crazy idea, right? That now suddenly you just identify as a woman and you can play any sport you want. Not a single Democrat in the House voted to protect women's sports, which means every single Democrat thinks it's okay to force biological men into your daughter's locker room. Wow. I mean, just think about that for a second. Like, wrap your head around how far we've come as a country under Joe Biden, where he has infiltrated every aspect of the federal government with trans speak. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And, to be clear, I would actually semi-support this if I could gamble on it. Like, I don't want the boys changing with the girls, but I was talking about this earlier. You remember the movie Rocky III, okay? If Mr. T changes his name to Mrs. T and fights Adrian, the Democrats are okay with that.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah,
I put my money on Mrs. T.
Mrs. I gotta tell you, I don't know what it is, but it makes me think Mrs. T. she looks sharp hitting that heavy bag. I gotta tell you, Steube.
I'm gonna put my money on the girl with the 13 size shoe. That's what I'm putting.
We're laughing, but we have to. I mean, there's no other way to really highlight the ridiculousness of this but to laugh at it. And the problem is, okay, they're erasing women. And we know this is true. Like, the Title IX protections are out the window if girls are now competing for scholarships against guys. And we know that to be true. So, I mean,
the timing of all this is interesting, too, because the Biden administration just updated new rules through the Department of Education that would force changes of Title IX and allow biological men, or they call them trans men or trans women, into women's sports all across the country.
Yep.
So, it's time that we Americans, and this is like a 70 to 80% issue across the political spectrum. Mm-hmm. This is not we're not in the minority on this issue.
Yep.
And the Biden administration is shoving it in our face and pushing these rules through.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're talking to Florida Representative Greg Steube from the 17th Congressional District. It's weird to me because it almost looks like they're just trying to mobilize like another lane. You know how the Democrats used to get things done by just yelling that we were all a bunch of racists? And enough people would be like, I don't want that kind of blowback. I guess I'll just agree with the Democrats. On some level, it feels like they're trying to run on this transphobia card when everyone in the country, especially on the conservative side, is like, hey, do what you want. Just don't do it to little kids. Don't erase women. If you want to be trans as an adult, fine. But we're just trying to protect the women's lane. And I think the children's lane, which again to them, and you could speak to this a little bit, if you're giving a 5-year-old kid the opportunity to make permanent life-altering decisions, you're neglecting the child's well-being, are you not?
Oh, I think that's child abuse. I mean, if you were allowing minors and letting them make the own decision without parents being involved, even if parents are involved, I don't think you should allow any type of gender reassignment surgery for minors, period.
Nope.
And they're forcing that agenda on the American people as well.
Yeah, that is barbaric to me. And you know what's funny? The Democrats will talk about, well, we get the support from the medical community and the pharmaceutical community. Yeah, because they're getting rich off these kids. If you get a gender reassignment, you're getting a surgery, you're getting a lifetime supply of meds. People are making a lot of money. And it's amazing because what they do is they accuse you of not caring about these kids as they're literally upending the rest of their existence. It's a projection and it's a scam, but it's a well-paying scam because there's so much money in this.
Well, and it's exactly what you said. We're not, instead of using the racist rhetoric, now we're transphobic rhetoric. And you should have heard the Democrats on the floor. It's all, why do you hate trans kids? Mm-hmm. And last time I looked, Leah Thomas, who beat out women for swimming, does not look like a child to me. He is a full-grown man. But they try to make it this emotional argument that we are transphobic and we don't want these trans kids to have opportunities. And I've said, they have plenty of opportunities. They play in the sport that they were born in their biological sex. Yep. So if they want to play baseball, they go play on the men's team if they're a biological male. If they're a woman, they go play on the softball team. It's very simple. We're not telling them they can't participate in athletics. We're just telling them they can't go against women if they're a biological male.
I mean, and honestly, it's so reasonable because look at it this way. I mean, you wouldn't let an 18-year-old kid compete in sixth grade baseball if he identified as a sixth grade baseball player, because he'd have a huge advantage in terms of throwing the ball and hitting the ball. But no one wants to have that conversation. But here's the thing I was going to ask you. I think a lot of Americans, including Republicans, would also support if the trans athletes just wanted to compete in their own trans athletes division. So you have a male athlete, a female athlete, but then there's a trans athlete. So you're men who pretend to be women and you compete against each other. But they wouldn't allow that because that's tolerance. And they don't actually want tolerance. They want to claim that there's intolerance. So is that why they fight so hard to get biological men into women's sports, do you think?
It's got to be part of it, is this ideology that we're going to force this progressive leftist ideology on the American people, despite the fact that 80% of Americans don't agree with it, don't support it, don't think it's equitable. And then the undermining, and this is what's just so fascinating to me too, and I said this on my speech on the floor, like you are undermining women's equality and women's ability under Title IX that Congress created for women over 50 years ago. But they don't care about that. So the party that, says that they support women is actually going against women by allowing biological men to compete with them on the playing field. It
is bananas. We're talking to Florida Representative Greg Steube. By the way, I meant to ask, how are you recuperating since your wife had you pushed off the roof of your house?
She's sitting right next to me, too.
Yeah, so she is. I'm telling you, Steube, I love my wife. She's the best thing about me, but I'm telling you, I took out too much life insurance. Every suggestion is like parasailing, cliff diving. Don't trust him, Steube.
Well, and I keep telling her that, see, I still don't remember anything. So she very well could have been underneath that ladder and kicked it right out from underneath and I wouldn't remember.
If you go look at the family browser history from that day, there's probably like local Ferrari dealerships. She was looking at cars. Like, I'm telling you, we're going to whack Steube.
Check that out.
I'm laughing. Give me one other
but I'm doing great.
Yeah, good.
Getting better and healing every day.
All right, no, that makes me happy to hear. We're rooting hard for you. Last question. Why is this the week? I understand there's a strong case to be made for a Donald Trump presidency, but why did everybody in Florida go Trump this week? Yourself, Byron, and everybody made this the week.
Well, part of it was because the DeSantis team started, pinging people.
Oh.
Now, I've never had a conversation with any of them. I've never had a conversation with Governor DeSantis about, he's ever reached out to me. When I've tried to reach out to him to discuss issues, I don't get a response. And suddenly his team is suddenly reaching out. So I think it was really their team trying to push people because DeSantis was going to be in Washington this past week, and he was. I've always supported the president. I've always been Team Trump. I was kind of waiting until things started working out. We have a governor who hasn't even announced that he's running for president. And so I didn't really think that the timing needed to happen. Yeah. But as soon as I got involved and announced my support for the president, then Vern Buchanan did, then Gus Bilirakis did, then John Rutherford did, then Brian Mast did, and it kind of had this flurry of activity because there was so much focus, I think, this past week on those two races. Okay, so you're basically, in a roundabout way, they were looking for an answer, and now you've become a trendsetter. That's what you're telling me? There's certainly no circumstance that suddenly 5 more members decided to get on. Yeah. Corey, Mills, and Byron got on a couple of days before, and there was all this chatter about it. And I felt like it was a good time for me to get involved and had the opportunity to spend some time with President Trump last night. And we'll be with him in Fort Myers tonight for their Lincoln Day. Oh, there you go. Absolutely cool. And I will tell you this, last but not least, I was guest hosting on TV on the TV side last week, and I had Byron was in the studio, and he brought his mom along for the ride, and she heckled us. Does Mrs. Donalds come to the chamber and heckle you guys? I have not met her, so she's really sweet. She's super, super sweet. Donald's mom? Yes, Donald's mom was at Fox. She did Hannity. She did Kennedy. I was guest hosting Kennedy. I was on both shows with him, and his mom's like the sweetest woman you'll ever meet in your life. And she was in the studio. She was busting our chops. It was great. So if you see him, say hello. But this is all good newsworthy stuff. Stay safe. Stay off the roof if your wife's around. We'll talk soon. Stay off the ladder. See you, man. There he goes.
The great Representative Greg Steube from the 17th Congressional District of Florida.